Viewers have been bugging me like crazy for almost a year now to review the new 6.8 Western cartridge, but I guess which really isn't new anymore. But I kind of stayed out of the argument because I really didn't have access to a 6.8 Western rifle. You know, my channel isn't one of those sponsored channels that's given equipment to review so they can give it a fluff review. So I didn't have access to a rifle. And after a year and a half, there's still no reliable reloading data for this cartridge. But admittedly, I looked at the case specifications and Winchester's claims for this cartridge, and I have to admit, I instantly became kind of a skeptic. Winchester claimed that the 6.8 Western is ballistically better than the 7mm Remington Magnum. You know, and that claim made absolutely no sense to me because the 6.8 Western case is just a shortened 270 Winchester Short Magnum case. You know, in the 270 Winchester Short Magnum couldn't outperform the 7mm Rem Mag. So how the hell could the 6.8 Western outperform the 7mm Rem Mag? You know, this claim from Winchester not only flew in the face of common sense, it kind of violates the laws of physics. There's just a huge amount of bullshit in this chart provided by Winchester. I'd even go as far as to say that Winchester's lying to us. These 7mm mag and 300 mag numbers are watered down low velocity loads, and they compare them to the top velocity loads with their own 6.8 Western PET cartridges. Even more disingenuous is the fact that they compare bullets like the Accubon Long Range and the Tip Game King, you know, these high BC bullets. You know, they compared them to loads that have bullets with way lower BCs. And, you know, like I said, BC starts to matter because they compare them at 500 yards in this little comparison that they have going right here. You know, and you'll also notice that they cherry-picked different bullet weights to make the drop less on their own pet loads with this. So that's also disingenuous in my opinion. You know, what really doesn't make sense is they make Accubon long-range bullets and all of these calibers, but they didn't use them to compare that to. You know, so why didn't Winchester use those bullets for comparison? Well, it's because they're hyping up their own cartridge right now, just like Hornady did with the 6.5 Creedmoor. You know, I love many of Winchester's products, but I'm really disappointed with Winchester for thinking that hunters are stupid enough to believe a chart like this. And by this point in time, you're probably sick and tired of reading fluff pieces in the gun rags about how great this cartridge is with really no objective information to back that claim up. And what about the name? 6.8 Western. Well, just to let you know, Winchester's had about a 60, 70-year fascination with trying to market guns and cartridges specifically for Western hunting. I mean, look at this late 50s Winchester advertisement from their catalog. Model 70 Westerner. You know, the 264 Winchester Magnum, when it first came out, was advertised as the best Western cartridge ever made. That was the 6.8 Western before the 6.8 Western came out. But they've always had marketing hype, you know, surrounding Western, so the so-called Western cartridges. And even really likes to paint a picture that when you go hunting out west, you need a super high-velocity, flat-shooting cartridge because, you know, you're making these incredibly long shots across prairies and across canyons, but that's just not true. I've hunted all over the West. As a matter of fact, every state in the West, and I've never not been able to stalk within 300 yards of an animal. And I mean, much of the West is heavily forested. So, I mean, you can't even get a 100-yard shot off. So, this whole idea that there's special Western cartridges is just BS. If you've hunted exclusively on the East Coast and nowhere else, don't believe that hype. You know, most of us over here still hunt with a 30-06 or a 308 or a 270 Win, and we do great. Are we going through the Creedmoor advertising hype again, only this time by Winchester? Or is there some magical secret that makes it not only perform better than the 20-year-old 270 Winchester Short Magnum, but somehow be ballistically better than the 7mm Remington Magnum? I wanted to find out, but I really needed a rifle and ammunition to do that. A few months ago, somebody that I know really well bought an XPR chambered in 6.8 Western. And I made a deal with him that I'd mount his scope and rings for him and zero his rifle for him if he let me get some load data for a cartridge review. And luckily for me, he agreed to let me do that as long as I bought my own ammunition for the test. So nobody actually has this ammunition in stock that I could find anywhere, both online and at all the gun stores in the Southern Valley here. So my buddy initially wanted me to do load development for him, which would have made a great video because there's no real reliable load data and information out there for this cartridge. But dies and brass are just out of stock everywhere right now. You know, I know the 6.8 Western really isn't selling that good, so it seems like manufacturers, especially ammo manufacturers, really have a wait-and-see approach to this cartridge right now. So my buddy basically bought a rifle that he can't even shoot. So in the interest of making this video, I swallowed my pride and bought a few boxes of ammo on Gunbroker for way too much money and had it sent to my local FFL. You know, what an expensive pain in the ass that was. So I'm going to do everything I can with what I have available to do a review of the 6.8 Western cartridge. And hopefully I can cut through a lot of the hype and conjecture and get you some real numbers. So I set my buddy's XPR up, which had a 24-inch barrel on it, and I mounted a Leupold VX5 scope on it, and it weighed just under 8.5 pounds. And I'll admit the recoil was sharp, like you know, most cartridges with the same ballistics and powder capacity, but it's definitely a much softer shooter than a 300 Win Mag, in my opinion. If that XPR was a good woodstock rifle that weighed about a pound more, I think it would have felt even better shooting this. But you definitely know you're not shooting a 308, but the recoil isn't that bad. Actually, it's a lot less than I expected. The ammunition, though, underperformed in my opinion as far as velocity goes. They advertise a muzzle velocity of 2,970 feet per second with this, but the highest I got, and that was only one round, was 2,930 feet per second, with most of the rounds actually going under 2,900 feet per second. The rounds that I ran by my lab radar, particularly with the 165 grain loads, had an extreme spread of 60 feet per second, which isn't really good. But be mindful that I used my lab radar to get these velocities, not some cheap shooting crony or a pro crony that you can't really trust. So I trust the numbers that I got. So I wasn't the only one that found that these factory loads underperformed. American Riflemen also tested this ammo and found that it underperformed with Winchester's stated velocities. And you can see right here, they tested it with an Oler 36 chronograph and only got 2,896 feet per second on average. And, you know, their groups averaged over 1 inch, just like mine did. So it's safe to say that I'm not the only one experiencing lower than advertised velocities with factory ammo for the 6.8 Western. And when I went to the range, I carefully shot these groups on my bald eagle rest, and I took every precaution to make sure I was maximizing the accuracy potential of that rifle. And I was also giving at least 10 minutes between shots for the barrel to cool down because it was a sporter profile barrel. And as you can see here, I couldn't get one sub-MOA group out of this after I zeroed that gun. And, I think maybe this was my best one right here. But I'm sure with hand loads, I can get really small groups easily with this cartridge. That's if reloading supplies ever become available. Perhaps I'll revisit this cartridge in the future if I get a chance to do some real load development with it. But overall, I'd say that recoil isn't bad shooting this cartridge compared to similar cartridges. And I think this cartridge has a lot of accuracy potential, just like its parent cartridge, the 270 Winchester Short Magnum does. Okay, now to the part of the video you've been waiting for. This is the part where height goes out the window and the poop gets removed from the litter box. All of these loads use the AccuBond long-range bullets in the same weight class. These are also not watered-down comparison loads that Winchester used in their highly misleading chart that they put out. First of all, you can clearly see that the 6.8 Western does not outperform the 7mm Rem Mag, like Winchester falsely claims. And for all intents and purposes, if you up the charge weight of the 6.8 Western to match 7mm Rem Mag velocity, recoil between the two cartridges would be very, very close to the same. But basically, you can keep running to maximum powder charge and go well beyond 3,000 feet per second on both cartridges. But the 7mm Rem Mag will still beat the Western. But the Western will have a little tiny bit of a recoil advantage. But then again, with the 7mm, you're getting more frontal diameter on the bullet too. You can also see that the 27 Nosler beats them both. But you really, really pay the price in recoil with that cartridge. And you have to wonder why anybody would want to shoot the 27 Nosler inside of 350 yards. The 27 Nosler really is a solution looking for a problem that doesn't exist. So let's move past the 27 Nosler. And here's where things get really interesting down here. I have a buddy who's an accomplished international hunter, and he uses the 270 Winchester Short Magnum exclusively on everything up to elk size game. His rifles are all made with a 1 8.5 twist on the barrel. And this is his load with the 165 grain long range AccuBond. And, I've seen faster and slower loads in this bullet class, but this guy shoots in his best accuracy node like a good hunter should. And this is a very good load in my opinion. But be mindful that the 270 Winchester Short Magnum, shooting the 165s, I've seen people get over 3,100 feet per second with that before. So, this is just a good, decent load that he uses. So, the 6.8 Western and the 270 Winchester Short Magnum use the same case, but the Western is a little bit shorter, so you don't mix up the two. And both of these fire the same exact bullet. So, if both of these use a barrel with the exact same twist rate, they perform pretty much the same. But the 270 Winchester Short Magnum should actually beat the 6.8 Western because of its slightly increased powder capacity because the case is a little bit longer. So the 6.8 Western is just a 270 Winchester short magnum repackaged with a faster twist barrel from the factory. Like it or hate it, that's the truth about the 6.8 Western. Like I stated earlier in this video, I really wanted to do a little bit of load development on this cartridge for my buddy, but we couldn't get any dies for this cartridge, and I didn't feel like modifying a 270 Winchester short magnum case, you know, just to make that work. So for now, all I can do is break these cartridges down so I can examine their components and report what I find to you. So I'll break out my trusty bullet puller, weigh the powder charge, and make a half-ass attempt to identify the powder that's in it. And I'll give you my thoughts on that. So I pulled a bullet with these Winchester 165 grain loads for 6.8 Western. And to my surprise, Winchester's using a ball powder on their loads, not an extruded powder like I kind of expected. And as a matter of fact, in my estimation, I'm pretty sure this is Winchester 760 ball powder. I poured some into the silver container right here. And let's do a side-by-side with the gold container. And to me, that's the same damn powder. So I do believe that Winchester is using 760 ball powder in their factory loads, which, you know, I hate to say this, but would explain the inconsistent velocities and the high extreme spreads I was getting with this ammunition. And let's see how many grains of powder that this has in it. Kind of curious as to that. .8 grains. So this has 62.8 grains of powder in this case with the factory 165 grain 6.8 Western loads. And these are obviously Winchester cases with Winchester large rifle magnum primers in it. So I guess Winchester's combination for the 6.8 Western is their own brass with their own magnum primers using 760 ball powder. So I pulled a bullet out of this Browning 175 grain load. See here, it's a pretty wicked looking cartridge right there. And you can see that's a 6.8 Western with 175 grain Sierra tipped Game King. So let's see how much that powder weighed. And that load of powder weighs 60.2 grains. And you could see here that that powder definitely isn't Winchester 760 like Winchester uses on their 162 and 165 grain loads. And Browning uses a ball powder too. This definitely isn't Winchester 760 like what's used in the lighter grain bullet loads, but actually this looks a lot like Winchester 780 Supreme powder. So that might be what it is. They might be using Winchester 780 ball powder for these 175 grain loads, and that would actually make more sense. But once again, these Browning loads looks like they use Winchester cases with Winchester large rifle magnum primers. And look at this. just pulling this bullet out, man, this Sierra Game King already started to expand. So I don't know if I would trust these Game Kings at a really close, with a really close high velocity hit on something like an elk shoulder. I don't know. But we're talking powders and reloading data here, and I'm pretty sure for the lighter 162 and 165 grain loads, Winchester's using 760 ball powder, and for the 175 grain loads, I think they're using Winchester 780 Supreme ball powder. So that's kind of my estimation of what these factory loads have in them. And I also want to warn you, and I'm already having regrets that I showed you the powder weights in this video, because I don't want people to go out there and buy, you know, Winchester 760 or 780 and load to these exact powder weights that you saw me measure out. Don't do that. You have to understand that the powder we buy as reloaders isn't the bulk powder that the ammo manufacturers buy to load their factory ammo with. This is known as canister grade powder. What the manufacturers use is what's known as bulk grade powders. And the properties and velocities on them are usually wildly different from each other. So do not go out and start loading your 6.8 Western with these exact same powder charges that I showed in this video. Please don't do that. And to be totally fair with Winchester, almost all factory ammo loads with ball powders rather than extruded powders. And the reason for this, there's actually multiple reasons for this. First of all, ball powder is cheaper to produce and buy in bulk. The second reason is that they can get max case fill on their loads to achieve maximum velocities with lower pressures than you're going to get with extruded powders. But the main reason is that these ball powders meter well in their automated equipment. You know, if they used an extruded powder, which some do, some actually do use an extruded powder, you're either going to get real bad inconsistencies with weights between cartridges, or you're going to have to slow down your process to trickle in grains to get the proper metering on it. So this ball powder meters very well, and that's another reason that they use it. But to tell you the truth, the problem with the ball powder is it's very temperature stable. And trust me, I live in a place where I might be hunting on the deer season opener in 110 degree weather and hunt another zone in my state, you know, a half hour the other way, and it might be below freezing. So this stuff is pretty temperature unstable. So that's probably why when people are, you know, buying their XPRs and their X-Bolts or Model 70s and going out and shooting this factory ammunition, they're not really getting good groups right now. And it's definitely not the gun's fault. You know, the Model 70s are really accurate. Those X-Bolts with those Morocco barrels are really accurate, but it's probably this powder, to tell you the truth. You know, it's not known for high accuracy. You're never going to go to any shooting competition or bench rest competition and find anybody using a ball powder. This stuff runs a little bit dirtier too. So this is the reason why hand loading your own ammo is multitudes better than shooting factory ammo. That's one of the reasons for it. And to tell you the truth, if I was going to load the 6.8 Western right now, especially those 165 grain AccuBonds, I would be using H4831 shortcut. This is the powder I would start with, definitely. The guys that shoot the Winchester, the 270 Winchester short magnum with the fast twist barrels are using this with their 165 grainers. And I'll tell you the truth, I think this is probably the perfect powder to start with. Probably Reloader 22 is another good one, especially, you know, you get up to the 175s, maybe Rotumbo for that. But this would be a great powder to start with those 165s, in my opinion. I'd imagine that the same powders guys have been shooting 165s from their 270 WSMs with will work just as well for the 6.8 Western. Like stated earlier, H4831 Shortcut would be my powder of choice. I'd also stick with the typical Magnum primers that you use for the 270 Winchester Short Magnum, since it's basically the same exact case, shooting the same exact bullets. I wish I could give you real load data for this cartridge, but that just isn't possible right now. Now to the utility of the 6.8 Western. If we're talking factory barrels with factory twist rates, the 6.8 Western is going to handle heavier bullets than 150 grains better than the 270 Winchester Short Magnum ever did. So if you want to shoot 165 and 175 grain bullets without custom barrel work, the Western is going to do that without any fuss or additional expenses, which is a good thing. But there is one thing that many don't consider. Most people choose the 270 class hunting cartridges because of the flat trajectory with relatively mild recoil. And you get this with the 120 to 140 grain bullets. And if you use bullets in this weight class, the 270 Winchester Short Magnum is gonna outperform the 6.8 Western because of its increased case capacity. I see a lot of these talking heads in the gun rags stating that if Jack O'Connor was alive today, he would have switched to the 6.8 Western. And I could tell you with certainty that these guys have never read any of Jack O'Connor's works. You know, O'Connor loved the 270 Winchester, shooting 130 grain projectiles, because he thought it was the perfect balance between recoil, trajectory, and energy. You know, and why on earth would Jack throw away his beloved #2 rifle and shoot the Western, which has the same amount of recoil as a 7mm Remington Magnum? You know, unlike other riders, Jack had an intimate relationship with the hunting world because he wasn't swayed by all the hype in the ammo and firearm manufacturing industry. You know, he looked at things logically and spoke his mind, even if that meant hurting Winchester's feelings. So let's look at this logically. 165 grain bullet traveling out of the muzzle at 2,900 feet per second is going to give most animals on this earth a dirt nap. And the 6.8 Western does this, but so does the 30-06. I mean, I shoot 165 and 168 grain bullets all the time with my 30-06 at that same velocity. So from a hunter who hunts at ethical hunting distances, it's wise to keep this in perspective. And you need to remember, at 300 yards, ballistic coefficient does not matter for high-power bottleneck rifle cartridges. You know, I hunt all over the West, and my Western rifle is a 30-06. So for most guys out there that shoot a 30-06 or a 270 Winchester or one of the 7mm, the 6.8 Western probably serves no real purpose for you. And with poor ammunition and reloading supply availability right now in the current market, the Western might even be a downgrade for you compared to what you have right now. So here's the bottom line with the 6.8 Western. It is, in fact, a repackaged 270 Winchester Short Magnum with just a faster twist barrel. If you think that's a bunch of stupid hype, well, you'd have a good argument. If you think that this cartridge will be an awesome hunting cartridge, you also have a very good argument. What most hunters think we have here is a circa 2008 argument between the 260 Remington and the 6.5 Creedmoor. But it's actually worse than that, because the Creedmoor at least used a completely different case design that kind of served a purpose. The 6.8 Western and the 270 Winchester Short Magnum actually used the same exact case, and really the only difference is the barrel. The hype surrounding new and improved cartridges is nothing new to the hunting world, and the 6.8 Western is just another chapter in that story. But before you decide to hate the 6.8 Western, there's really only one fact that matters. A 165 grain bullet leaving the muzzle at 2,900 to 3,000 feet per second is going to kill things. You know, even if the Western is just another hype cartridge, it has all the traits necessary for being a fantastic deer and elk cartridge. Will the 6.8 Western last into the future? Hell, I don't know. Odds are against it, though, as the only real hype cartridge to become mainstream in the last 30 years has been the Creedmoor. But one thing is for sure, ammo companies will keep trying and consumers will keep buying. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you want to reach me, you could shoot me an email at desertdogoutdoors@gmail.com. Well, hit subscribe if you find my content worthy of your subscription, and I hope you do. And as always, thanks for watching, and good hunting.